as well as other Obama officials, somehow retained their security clearances long after leaving their government jobs. This allowed them access to highly classified information, including leaks from former colleagues who are still working in the intel agencies. Today, the White House announced it is seeking to revoke those clearances. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But first, we finally have a copy of the FISA warrant application that allowed the Obama administration to spy on the Trump campaign in 2016. That document is heavily redacted, but certain facts are clear. The clearest of all, the Obama administration argued with a straight face that Carter Page was a secret agent working for the Russians. This is absurd, and yet it was widely believed in Washington. Watch this.
There was a very clear belief that Carter Page was conspiring with Russia in ways that were nefarious.
There was overwhelming evidence to have probable cause to do surveillance on Carter Page. It would have been a dereliction of duty for our FBI not to have sought a surveillance warrant.
As you say, it makes a compelling case that there is probable cause to believe that Carter Page was acting as an agent of a foreign power.
A compelling case, really? Well, if it's so compelling, why aren't we hearing that case in court at Carter Page's treason trial? Well, because it's total nonsense. It's a bad joke. The FISA application doesn't even begin to prove that Carter Page betrayed his country in any way. But the application does prove other things. We now know, for example, conclusively, that the discredited Steele dossier was central to the Obama administration's request to spy on the Trump campaign. Former FBI Director Jim Comey has publicly denied that, perhaps assuming the actual request would never be released. Comey claimed that the dossier was not a significant part of the government's request, and that turns out to be a lie. Not only did the Obama administration use the Steele dossier as the basis of its spying request, it appears the FBI did essentially nothing to verify the claims of the dossier, despite the fact they knew it was a partisan document paid for by political operatives, the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC. It was too good to check, apparently. Instead of sending its own agents to run down the facts, which of course it could have done, in fact it exists to do, the FBI instead cited a Yahoo News article to prove that the dossier was reliable. The only problem with that, the Yahoo piece was itself based on leaked information from Steele. You'd have to be utterly incompetent to do something like that, or totally dishonest. Meanwhile, the man identified by the Obama administration as a Russian agent walks free tonight. He is a living rebuke to this whole grotesque hoax. He is Carter Page, and he joins us live tonight. Carter Page, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So, this application repeatedly describes you as an agent of the Russian government, repeatedly. Are you aware of any criminal charges pending against you? Do you expect to be charged for working for the Russian government?
Not only am I not aware of it, Tucker, there's also the fact that no question I've ever been asked by the FBI in terms of any of these fake theories related to the dossier, as you're alluding to. None of those made any sense whatsoever. So there's not even a premise by which I could even conceivably be charged. So it's absolutely ridiculous.
And yet there are specifics from the dossier. Apparently, this comes from the dossier, but the application accuses you of meeting with two Russian officials, both named Igor Sechin and Igor Divyekin. Did you meet with either one of those men?
I never met with them in my life, ever. Yep.
Do you believe that allegation comes from the Steele dossier?
Absolutely. It's funny, in July of 2016, 2 months before the Yahoo News article came out, I started getting these calls from various news reporters, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, all asking me about these same two names of people I've never even heard of in my, I had heard of Sechin, I never even heard of Divyekin. And so it was obvious, and some people told me from the media that they heard about it from the Clinton campaign, et cetera, but, So finally they found someone to put it out in 45 days before the election in Yahoo News,
So the Clinton campaign, of course, learned about it from Christopher Steele, whom they were paying to gather this dossier. And it's my understanding, too, from the testimony in recent months that Steele never visited Russia, never bothered to go to Russia as he assembled this dossier. Is that correct?
That's my understanding as well. And, there's a number of lawsuits going on, and Mr. Gubarev down in Southern District of Florida. So
right.
Hopefully
Whom
these civil, yes, I know. Hopefully these civil cases can get to the bottom of this. And, it's
but
great.
Yet at the same time, now we learn that in October of 2016, really at the height of the intensity of the presidential campaign, Christopher Steele, on the payroll of the Clinton campaign, briefs officials at the State Department, and that briefing apparently was used as one of the pretexts for spying on you. Am I connecting those dots correctly?
That's my understanding, Tucker. And, just based on this, these 400 plus pages of documents, there's a lot in there about media. It's sort of quoting a lot of media sources. And, I've talked with a couple of former assistant U.S. attorneys, et cetera, and no one has ever heard of anything like this in terms of this type of a court filing. It's just absolutely preposterous in terms of their sources. So,
one of the reasons I find this story so fascinating is because you are an actual person, an American, a Naval Academy graduate, and you're willing to talk in public. It's amazing to me that you have been the target of this surveillance and lived to tell the tale. You're not being charged, as you said, and I think you're probably right. What has it done to your life? How do you feel knowing that the federal government was spying on your personal life for a year?
Tucker, it's absolutely outrageous, but I have to say I'm very happy to have gotten the finally, 14 months later, the FBI answered my FOIA requests. This weekend, we started having a little bit of transparency. Obviously, there's 100 plus pages of blacked out information, and I think, it's just starting the process in terms of getting to the real truth of these crimes that were committed against American democracy with this abusive process in the FISA court. So.
But really committed against you. I mean, your government, on the basis of no actual evidence, has accused you of treason and spied on you as a result. I mean, how does that, as someone who served your country in the military as a naval officer, how does that make you feel?
Well, my bigger concern is, there's obviously big problems in the U.S. Department of Justice. There are these false court pleadings, the false court pleadings that U.S. Attorney Berman has put in terms of my civil case against Broadcasting Board of Governors. But the bigger issue, which is my bigger concern, is the complete failure of the U.S. intelligence community in terms of looking at this Russia issue. If this is what they're using...
Well, it sounds like they succeeded, actually. I don't know if it's a failure. They had a very specific goal in mind, and they've achieved it. That's why we're talking about it today. They've hamstrung the workings of government for a year and a half. Carter Page, you're a lot more forgiving than I would be in your position. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tucker.
Alan Dershowitz is, of course, a professor emeritus at Harvard Law School. He's the author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, and he joins us tonight. Professor, from what you have seen of this FISA application, what's your response?
Well, I think Congress ought to ask the people who drafted the FISA response why they deliberately left out the fact that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee paid for the Steele dossier. That's question number one. Question number two, why did they, if they did, we don't know about the redactions, why did they leave out the fact that the dossier also had this salacious allegations about urination in beds, the kind of thing that would make any judge look very suspiciously on the source of the material. Instead, what they did is they said, this is a guy who had previously given them reliable information, without indicating that now it looks like he may be giving them very partisan and very unreliable information. So I think we need to get the answers to those questions before we can come to any firm conclusion.
I'm struck by the treatment that Carter Page has received in the press. Here's a guy who's not been charged with any crime. There's no credible evidence he betrayed his country. He's been accused of treason by his own government and spied upon, and yet the reservoir of sympathy for him seems very shallow. No one seems to care. Why is that?
Because in our partisan world, the presumption of innocence only applies to your side, not the other side. Democrats and people on the left forget the presumption of innocence. They're prepared to argue that a search warrant is proof of guilt or an indictment is proof of guilt. For example, the indictment of the 12 Russians who will never be brought to trial is taken as containing the truth. They're just allegations. It may very well be that they're guilty, and we know there was intrusion or an attempt to intrude on the election, but we have to remember the presumption of innocence. It doesn't only apply to your side of the political spectrum.
That's exactly right. You really are the last liberal in America, and I'm glad that you're here. So recently, the creepy porn lawyer, the guy who's representing Stormy Daniels, said he knows about the contents of taped conversations between Donald Trump and his lawyer, Michael Cohen. You pointed out the obvious. If he knows what's inside, then he's able to obtain sealed information, and that's bad. Here's how you described it.
I do know there's more tapes of President Trump. There's multiple tapes of President Trump, number one.
How do you know there are other tapes involving the President of the United States? Are you privy to what was seized from the office? That's a very important question. I wish you'd answer it.
Well, Alan, I'm not going to answer your question because I don't have to answer your question.
If we're right, then you have access to information that's supposed to be sealed and supposed to be secret. How do you have that information? Well, Avenatti answered it by... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he has the information?
Well, he's that or he's making it up. Look, he also accused me, to deflect from my very hard question, he accused me of making false predictions, whereas all of his predictions are correct. His major prediction in May was that President Trump would resign. We're waiting to see that happen. I predicted accurately what the Supreme Court would decide in the travel ban case. I predicted accurately who President Trump would nominate to the Supreme Court. All of my predictions have come true. And almost none of Avenatti's predictions have come true. Also, the American Bar Association had an article recently about the ethical concerns that lawyers, an ethics expert like Professor Stephen Gillers of NYU, have about Avenatti's conduct. So I think basically his conduct speaks for itself, and my predictions, look, I wrote a book. You mentioned it before, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. In my book, the predictions are all in there. Anybody can read them. Anybody can see that I have been straight on. I've been accurate. The reason I'm accurate is because I don't have a partisan dog in this fight. I just call them as I see them. And sometimes my predictions help one side or help the other. But I'm not trying to make self-fulfilling prophecies the way Avenatti and others on the extreme side of this are making self-predicting, self-fulfilling prophecies. Let's wait to see if President Trump resigns. And if he doesn't, put Avenatti on the show. Confront him with that prediction. He not only made a prediction, he said, I guarantee you that President Trump will resign after hearing what Rudy Giuliani said and what Avenatti said. It's total nonsense.
We've invited him many times. So far, this is the only show he won't do.
We'll have him on
Professor,
with me.
Thank you very much.
Have him on with me against each other. Good.
Anytime. I would love that. Thank you very much. Well, in the wake of our reporting last week, the White House announced it is pursuing a revocation of security clearances for John Brennan and other former intelligence officials.
Not only is the president looking to take away Brennan's security clearance, he's also looking into the clearances of Comey, Clapper, Hayden, Rice, and McCabe. The president is exploring the mechanisms to remove security clearance because they've politicized and in some cases monetized their public service and security clearances.
Just minutes later, Jim Clapper, who is a liar, complained that this is all deeply unfair because he has a right to a security clearance. You can't take it away. Here he is on CNN.
This is kind of a petty way of retribution, I suppose, for speaking out against the president, which I think are on the part of all of us are born out of genuine concerns about President Trump.
Congressman Raul Labrador is a Republican. He represents the great state of Idaho, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, why do these guys have security clearances in the first place, and why do they feel entitled to have them?
That's a great question. So there's two issues that we have to address first. Is why do they have the security clearance at this time? And the reason they have it is in the past we have always extended it to people who were in these kinds of positions because they were of benefit to the government. Not because they were a benefit to themselves, but because the government could use their assistance during a transition or anything like that. clearly they're not benefiting the government right now. They're not benefiting this administration. But the second question, especially when you talk about Clapper and some of these other individuals, they have been found to lie to Congress. So it's interesting to me, why do they even have this extended security clearance?
I agree.
When they have already lied to the American people, and they have lied to the institutions that represent the American people.
Well, Clapper flat out lied to the Congress, and I don't understand why you all didn't hold him in contempt or prosecute him. What he did seems to me to be illegal. But leaving that aside, these guys work for cable news networks. I mean, they're much like I am. They are paid to talk on television. Wouldn't that disqualify them right there? Or do I get a security clearance too? And what are the rules here exactly?
That's a terrific question. So, like I said earlier, they have the security clearance to benefit the government. The moment that they start receiving money for the information that they have, the moment that they start monetizing the information that they have received from the government, they should no longer have the security clearance. And it's something that in this new age where we have cable news, where you have people moving from government to TV, it's something that we need to rethink about extending these security clearances. I don't think they should be done automatically like we have done in the past with these high offices.
Yeah, I don't know why we would do it at all. I mean, Brennan is clearly unhinged. She's a political extremist. Isn't the point of the intel agencies to inform the executive so that he can make foreign policy decisions? Is there another reason we have these agencies? I thought that was their charter.
That is the only point that they have the security clearance. And that's why in the past we have extended security clearances to people who had high office, these security clearances in previous administrations, because they were helping the new administration with the information that they needed to receive. They were maybe instructing their replacements. They were working with them. But right now it's clearly that they have decided to be partisan. They have decided to become unhinged in many instances. To accuse the President of the United States of actual treason is something that needs to be really reconsidered, and we need to start thinking about why this individual has this high security clearance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the deep state thing is real, but I can promise you the fact these guys have security clearances convincing half the country that it's real is bad just for that, I think. Anyway, Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last week on this program, we reported, based on the accounts of two separate sources, that Democratic lobbyist Tony Podesta had been offered immunity in return for testifying against Paul Manafort. Well, today, a list of witnesses granted immunity in Manafort's trial in Virginia for tax and fraud violations was released. Podesta was not on that list because he has nothing to do with that case. According to our sources, Tony Podesta has been offered immunity to testify in Paul Manafort's trial in D.C., that's a trial on criminal FARA violations related to the lobbying both of them did on behalf of the government of Ukraine. Obviously, we'll continue to pursue that story as it unfolds. Well, the state of New York is so determined to keep immigrants in this country, even ones here illegally, they are pardoning convicted criminals in order to halt their deportation. Are they doing that for you? Probably not. That story's next.
Tucker Carlson.
Well, the left's drive to let anybody into America under any circumstances, no matter what, has become so all-consuming that they've found themselves, as of today, fighting to keep criminals in the United States, literally fighting to do it. Today, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, pardoned 7 immigrants convicted of drug dealing, assault, larceny, and other crimes solely to protect them from being deported. Think Andrew Cuomo would pardon you for those crimes? Wouldn't even consider it, because you're here legally. Meanwhile, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is laying out the stakes of the fall midterm, saying a triumphant Democratic Party ought to immediately move to abolish border enforcement. Watch this.
So when we flip the House and flip the Senate, I think the first thing we should do is deal with the children who are being separated from their families at the border. We should, I think we should get rid of ICE.
Jumaane Williams is a New York City councilman. He's a candidate for lieutenant governor of the state of New York, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Williams, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Last time I was here, I had a civil conversation with Tammy. I'm expecting the same now.
Yeah, well, you may or may not get it, depending. But I have a very simple question for you, which is, can you imagine a scenario where I get caught dealing cocaine or committing theft or committing assault, and the governor of New York wants me so much to stay in New York that he pardons me as a citizen.
Well, there are pardons given out all the time. I think the President of the United States has just handed out a few pardons as well. What I think is happening is, thankfully, the Democratic Party in New York State is finally showing some leadership on this issue, and my hope is that the Democratic Party across this country does the same.
And by leadership, you mean saying to illegal aliens, you can commit any crime and you can stay. Because we want people who commit crimes, larceny, drug dealing, assault, DUI. Those are our kind of people. Is that the message that you're sending?
No, by leadership, we mean protecting human beings who are being targeted for no other reason but normally what they look like. So we've chosen a group of people
what
that
they
we've
look
said
like.
you should be targeted.
Okay, so Tamar Samuda from Jamaica was pardoned for larceny and assault. Who did Mr. Samuda commit assault against?
So normally speaking, we look at the crime someone has committed, and then we look at the entirety of their lives. What we have chosen,
okay, but
undocumented.
I'm looking at I get it. But Tamar Samuda from Jamaica, convicted of larceny now and assault. Who did he assault?
I'm not sure. Have you asked them if they mind the pardon? But have you asked them if they mind being the pardon?
Oh, but you don't care enough to find out, is what you're saying?
No, have you?
Because you're saying that this is about... No, but I'm against all of this. I don't think that you should pardon people simply because they're illegal aliens. You do, because you're saying we care about people. And I'm asking, do you care about the person he assaulted enough to know his name?
Absolutely.
And the answer is no, you don't care. Oh, but you don't know. Why is that?
Absolutely. So, one, I do want to rehumanize them.
So what's his name?
I know you have a tendency to dehumanize, but these are undocumented
I'm trying to... No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to humanize the person. Tamar Samuda is the illegal who got pardoned. Who's the guy he assaulted? I want to humanize him. But you don't, because you don't even know his name because you don't care enough to find out.
Oh, I see.
Why is that?
That is because what we're trying to do, and thankfully we are doing, and I thank the governor. I'm not sure why he has a lieutenant governor who thinks the opposite and wants to turn people over. He should probably support me if this is what he wants to do outside of election time. But what we need to do...
Wait, hold on. Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to humanize the victim of the assault. So will you at least acknowledge that that's a human being too, maybe an American citizen worth protecting?
100%.
Then why don't you know his name? Why don't you know anything about the assault? Why don't you care?
Well, the strange thing here is, before the pardon, you didn't know his name, and so if the person was,
I didn't know Tamar Samuda. I didn't know he existed until today.
The person who's being deported is a part of a group of people whom you love to dehumanize, and as a whole,
I'm using his name. He's a human being I don't want living here. He's a human being, absolutely.
Sure. The reason I'm going to be on trial next week for civil disobedience, stopping an illegal deportation that occurred, is similar to the reason why I'm here, to stop the immoral deportations that are occurring because of ICE.
Okay.
And what we have done is decided that there are
but hold on. Before you give me another moral lecture, you guys are all preachers now. It's so interesting. For people who don't believe in God, you're very religious. But let me ask you this.
I very much believe in God. My faith is very important.
I mean, as a party that's as hostile to traditional Christianity as your party is, there's a lot of moralizing.
That's not true.
But let me ask, can you understand why certain New Yorkers, the top half of your state is dying, in case you haven't been there recently, it's dying, desiccated, hollowed out, no jobs, sadness. You can see why the American citizens living there would look down to New York City and say, why are they spending all this time pardoning illegal aliens? What about me? Why is no one worrying about the fact I haven't had a job?
Communities that have immigrants and undocumented immigrants, the crime rate is actually lower. And if we want to look at why people don't have jobs, it's not because of undocumented immigrants. It's because of policies that you generally tend to support on Fox News, which is why in New York State, 1% are making more than 45 times the amount of the bottom 99%. And so that's where we should focus our energy. Yeah, you should be.
Yeah,
but
instead we're pardoning people who committed assault because they're illegal aliens.
No,
you can see why people might worry about your priorities.
We're trying to protect a group of people who are having their babies ripped from them by
But what about your people? What about
immoral-
Americans?
By
No one cares
immoral-
about them, I've noticed.
Of course we do. We care about
Including you.
Americans.
You don't even know
and
their
we care
names,
about-
I notice.
You don't
Right.
know any of their names, and you don't care. So you don't even care.
I know
that
Tamar
babies-
Samuda
that
is getting
babies-
pardoned for
what
assault.
Are the names
You
of
don't
the
know who he
babies
assaulted. It's
that
pretty
were
funny.
ripped from the border from their mother? Do you even care what their names were? Do you have any idea
All right.
about the
Mr.
transgender
Councilman?
woman who was allowed to die?
Nope, you got me. I don't know, but I appreciate your coming on. Well, much like the creepy porn lawyer, Hillary Clinton requires publicity to survive. She has received a bit of publicity. She may not be happy about it. She's complaining. We'll tell you about what. That's next. Well, much like death in Texas, it's pretty much impossible to escape Hillary Clinton. She is everywhere, and she reemerged this week to denounce the president's immigration policies. Watch.
Absorbing immigrants, creating opportunities that take advantage of our diversity, opening the doors. All of that has been to our advantage. And for those who want to turn the clock back on that and say somehow that has hurt America, they are just not walking around with their eyes open.
Well, if, like most people in Brooklyn, you just can't get enough, it might be your lucky day. She clearly wants to run again for the presidency for a third time, but a new obstacle has appeared. Brand new obstacle, new pictures. They show Hillary Clinton enjoying a dinner with disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein in December 2016 after she lost the election. Now that we know that virtually everyone close to Weinstein knew what he was really like, you got to wonder, what did Hillary Clinton know? And what's her response to that picture? Not that she'll ever be asked. Tammy Bruce is a New York radio host, and she joins us tonight. Tammy, what do you think?
Well, new death in
Quite a
Texas,
picture.
right? Yeah, great point. She's doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Look, what's interesting is that I believe was on December 13th. And this was clearly after the shock, in about a month within a month of the shock of the election loss. That's when you bring the people closest to you. That's when you are having dinner with the most important people. They've known Weinstein for decades. It's not like they met him a few weeks before the election. They've known him for decades. Weinstein contributed money to Bill Clinton's defense fund during the Monica Lewinsky dynamic. So he's been in their lives in a very important way for a very long time. And yes, we know that with Weinstein, literally everybody knew. She's, in trouble one way or another. Either she's the only person on earth who did not know, which means she shouldn't be president, or she did know and is misrepresenting exactly what she knew anyway. So she can't win in this regard. And this is, of course, her problem overall with her situation. She can't take responsibility for the nature of the choices she's made.
He's also awful. I know Harvey Weinstein. I know a lot of people who know him very well. You won't meet a single person who knew Harvey who doesn't say the same thing, which he's repulsive.
Yeah.
I mean, from his table manners to his attitude, why would she voluntarily hang around with someone like that? I mean, I think honestly, that's a fair question.
Right. And look, I think that you have friendships and relationships that are transactional, that somebody does things for you, or it's an important kind of collection within your group. But he was important enough to have dinner with just a few weeks after that election loss. And I've said to you, and I'll say it again, this is what I want people to realize. If Hillary Clinton had won, the Me Too movement never would have started. People like Harvey Weinstein would be elevated into more positions of power. The Eric Schneiderman of New York would have more power. None of the things that we see as being important revelations in society that make people's lives better would not have occurred. And the people like that would have been elevated. And there she is complaining about Donald Trump for deporting criminal, illegal aliens to also make people's lives better, to improve our day-to-day living quality, especially amongst legal immigrants, people of color, and people within the inner city. Generally, people who did not vote for him, but his immediate actions have been improving the quality of life for all of us. And there she is.
Well, that's exactly it.
Lamenting and being caught with, of course, the worst among us. And I think every day we're reminded about the value of the choices we made in November of 2016.
Well, but that's it. I mean, rich people love low-wage, low-skilled immigration. Why wouldn't they? I mean, that's who does their laundry. The only people who get shafted are working class and poor people who get completely bulldozed by it. Why does nobody ever say that?
You know, I think that there is such a bubble, that there is a lack of a connection with those regular people, with the normals, if you will, with that swath of middle America that has been, that has been Atlas for, 200 years, holding up the world on their shoulders, delivering their sons and daughters and loved ones for the military, feeding the world, and they've been taken for granted. And it's maybe not as dramatic, not as exciting to talk about them as it is to talk about the drama of illegal immigration and of the elites. But we know who's really understanding the impact of what Donald Trump is doing, and how their lives, when their lives improve in that middle section of America, that is what improves the lives of everyone on this planet.
Tammy, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, dear.
The great Tammy Bruce. Well, the press spent a week calling the Helsinki summit the treason summit. Voters didn't seem impressed or to care at all. In fact, the president's approval numbers went up a little bit. We'll have those polls. Amazing. Next.
When my hot water heater failed.
Well, if you were trapped in an airport last week and forced to watch CNN, or stuck in a log cabin at the end of the earth with only Max Boot for company, obviously we feel sad for you, but you might have come to the conclusion that the United States had been taken over by Russia, because for a full week, hysterical pundits and lawmakers have claimed that the president somehow committed treason during the summit in Helsinki, right there on stage. Treason, a death penalty offense. And that merited impeachment, or maybe a military coup. One member of Congress from Tennessee called for that. Well, what did voters think? They didn't seem to care at all, literally at all. A new Wall Street Journal NBC poll found the president's approval rating increased a point from 44 to 45. Why are they so unfazed? Well, perhaps because another poll, this is a fascinating one by Gallup, found that the number of voters, the percentage of voters concerned about Russia, less than 1%, just a hash mark. The number one concern for American voters on both sides of the aisle, immigration. Interesting. Richard Goodstein is a lawyer who advised Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He's very concerned about Russia. He joins us tonight. So, Richard, the question is, you've sounded the alarm, boy, for more than a year now that the president is part of a sleeper cell, working for Vladimir Putin to overthrow our democracy from within. And I think you believe that. You're very sincere about it, very intense. You've got all the sort of fake data on that. You haven't convinced anybody. Why? Is it time to do some soul searching and ask, why have I failed?
So here's what's fake data. That Gallup, that poll that you cited, that Wall Street Journal NBC poll, half of it was taken before that fabulous press conference that Trump had with Putin, and half afterwards, okay? If you look at Gallup has him at 42 this week. The aggregate of polls, Real Clear Politics has him at 43. 538 has him at 42, okay?
Whatever. I mean, this number goes up and down. But the issue numbers, though, are interesting, really interesting, don't you think? Nobody cares about Russia. Why?
Well, the fact of the matter is, again, Obama, Clinton, and Reagan all, when they had numbers appreciably higher than Trump is now, got clobbered in the midterm elections.
And he may get clobbered. Look, I'm not making that, but hold on, I'm not making that case. I'm not here to say Republicans are going to win in the midterm. I don't know. I don't even like politics. I don't cover it very much. I'm interested in the ideas, the issues, what actually is moving the country in one direction or another. And Russia is what we spent a year and a half talking about, because it's the most important thing, because Trump is a secret agent for Putin. And in the Gallup poll, I think you would agree that's a pretty good poll. Less than 1% believe you. They don't care what you're saying. Your mouth is moving, but they don't understand the words. It's of such little interest. Instead, they're worried about immigration. What do you think of that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Trump is underwater on immigration in that very Wall Street Journal NBC poll that you cited by a not insubstantial margin. And secondly, as regards Russia, in the past year, more people believe than believed a year ago that Mueller's on the right track and that Russia did interfere. And more people believe, 10% more, believe that the Russians actually affected the outcome of the election. So, yeah, I agree. It's not in the top 10.
No, it's not only in the top 10. It doesn't even rate. It's a hash mark. It's unmeasurable. The number is so small. So here's the point I'm making. Not that I'm not arguing whether Mueller's doing a good job or whether the Republicans are going to win or lose in the midterms. I'm just saying, as an issue, This is insane because it's a democracy and the parties should speak to the things that voters care about. That's what they're supposed to do. And the Democrats have been talking for a year and a half about something they literally couldn't be less interested in. Meanwhile, there are all these other issues that affect their day-to-day lives, and you guys are either ignoring them or you're on the wrong side. Let's pardon people who committed assault and larceny so they can stay in the country because we need more criminal illegals. Like, let's abolish ICE. That's not what the public wants. Right?
I agree.
Or do they want that?
What the public wants is economic justice and social justice. That's actually, I think, what the Democrats are going to run on in 2018 and 2020, and it's what the public doesn't think they're getting. So I'm not part of that whole ICE business. I don't go there.
But hold on. But that's the cutting edge. I'm sure you don't, because our viewers may not know this since they know you from TV, but like in real life, you're sort of a sane person. I don't think you're crazy, actually. I mean, more or less. That's kind of the cutting edge of your party is abolishing ICE right now. They really going to win on that? Honestly.
I understand that there are people who want to dramatize the relatively few candidates, and I'm not somebody who supports them, who wants to do away with ICE. Okay, that's not the majority view right now. Okay.
All right, we'll see. We'll still check next week. Richard, thank you. We're out of time, sadly. Good to see you. Well, the media howl about Russia. Many former American officials are openly going to work on behalf of another country, the country that's overtaking our economy and actually pulling a lot of the strings. It's not Russia. We'll leave you a commercial break to guess what it is. We'll be right back.
You're headed down the highway when the guy in front slams on his...
Well, if you were trapped in an airport last week and forced to watch CNN, or stuck in a log cabin at the end of the earth with only Max Boot for company, obviously we feel sad for you, but you might have come to the conclusion that the United States had been taken over by Russia, because for a full week, hysterical pundits and lawmakers have claimed that the president somehow committed treason during the summit in Helsinki, right there on stage. Treason, a death penalty offense. And that merited impeachment or maybe a military coup. One member of Congress from Tennessee called for that. Well, what did voters think? They didn't seem to care at all, literally at all. A new Wall Street Journal NBC poll found the president's approval rating increased a point from 44 to 45. Why are they so unfazed? Well, perhaps because another poll, this is a fascinating one by Gallup, found that the number of voters, the percentage of voters concerned about Russia, less than 1%, just a hash mark. The number one concern for American voters on both sides of the aisle, immigration. Interesting. Richard Goodstein is a lawyer who advised Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He's very concerned about Russia. He joins us tonight. So, Richard, the question is, you've sounded the alarm, boy, for more than a year now that the president is part of a sleeper cell, working for Vladimir Putin to overthrow our democracy from within. And I think you believe that. You're very sincere about it, very intense. You've got all the sort of fake data on that. You haven't convinced anybody. Why? Is it time to do some soul searching and ask, like, why have I failed?
So here's what's fake data. That Gallup, that poll that you cited, that Wall Street Journal NBC poll, half of it was taken before that fabulous press conference that Trump had with Putin and half afterwards, okay? If you look at Gallup has him at 42 this week. The aggregate of polls of Real Clear Politics has him at 43. 538 has him at 42, okay?
Whatever. I mean, this number goes up and down. But the issue numbers, though, are interesting, really interesting, don't you think? Nobody cares about Russia. Why?
Well, the fact of the matter is, again, Obama, Clinton, and Reagan all, when they had numbers appreciably higher than Trump is now, got clobbered in the midterm elections.
And he may get clobbered. Look, I'm not making that, but hold on, I'm not making that case. I'm not here to say Republicans are going to win in the midterm. I don't know. I don't even like politics. I don't cover it very much. I'm interested in the ideas, the issues, what actually is moving the country in one direction or another. And Russia is what we spent a year and a half talking about because it's the most important thing, because Trump is a secret agent for Putin. And in the Gallup poll, I think you would agree that's a pretty good poll. Less than 1% believe you. They don't care what you're saying. Your mouth is moving, but they don't understand the words. It's of such little interest. Instead, they're worried about immigration. What do you think of that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Trump is underwater on immigration in that very Wall Street Journal NBC poll that you cited by a not insubstantial margin. And secondly, as regards Russia, in the past year, more people believe than believed a year ago that Mueller's on the right track and that Russia did interfere. And more people believe, 8-10% more, believe that the Russians actually affected the outcome of the election. So, yeah, I agree. It's not in the top 10.
No, it's not only in the not top 10. It doesn't even rate. It's a hash mark. It's unmeasurable. The number is so small. So here's the point I'm making. Not that I'm not arguing whether Mueller's doing a good job or whether the Republicans are going to win or lose in the midterms. I'm just saying, as an issue, this is insane because it's a democracy and the parties should speak to the things that voters care about. That's what they're supposed to do. And the Democrats have been talking for a year and a half about something they literally couldn't be less interested in. Meanwhile, there are all these other issues that affect their day-to-day lives, and you guys are either ignoring them or you're on the wrong side. Let's pardon people who committed assault and larceny so they can stay in the country because we need more criminal illegals. Like, let's abolish ICE. That's not what the public wants, right?
I agree.
Or do they want that?
What the public wants is economic justice.